everybody. How's it going today?
Morning, Tyler.
Okay. All right. So, why is this poll thing not loading? I was gonna just quickly talk about. So, real quick, let me pull. So, next Monday I'll be traveling, so we won't be doing anything Monday. So, I don't know if you guys want to do something on the 30th, or if you guys just want to hold off and do it till the 6th. So, any thoughts there? Anybody want to? Matt, what are you doing for your stuff for like during the holidays here?
I will be here, except my only day I'm gonna need off is the 7th, which in between I'll be here every day.
Okay, yeah, I know. Are you doing like trainings on the 20, like on your, like on the 26th? Are you doing one or whatever? You're obviously
I was
not
planning on even having training on Christmas Eve too.
Wow,
I mean, I go hard, so every day Tuesday, and I'll even do it on
making me
Christmas.
look bad. Making me look bad over here. Jeez.
Yeah, I don't care. Every Tuesday, unless I can't physically, but.
Okay. Well, I'll be traveling on Monday, so I won't be able to do that. So what I'll do is I'll plan on doing one. So next week there'll be no training on Monday. The week after, on the 30th, we'll plan on doing one. And what I'm trying to do is pull up this poll so I can, because my goal is to try to make it so only 7 of you have responded. There's 20 of you in here, so let's get more people to answer that survey in the chat. I'm going to post it again. There's 21 of you in here, so should at least get more than 7 voters. So with that being said, I'm going to try to start rotating. It looks like right now that there's more, product training and comparisons and, client presentations work and more like live case examples. So my goal is to start rotating, every other week and make an announcement being like, hey, this week I'm going to be covering, this comparison or this presentation or this worksheet ahead of time. So that way you guys can be aware and of knowing, hey, this is exactly what he's going to be covering. So that's number one. Number two, I guess the next thing is what do you guys want to cover today? So I have 3 different cases that I can work on. I have one with a client that wants to create an opportunity fund with around he's got 800,000. I have another case that I'm working on with an agent where the client has 2 million. So I have 2 really high, like front load opportunity banking policy designs. And then I have another, which you guys were a part of the conversation when I first happened, those term quotes that I was doing for some of my friends that I think we were doing together a few weeks ago. I had a meeting with them, and they are saving a lot more money than I thought they were. So I didn't know if you guys wanted me to go through, okay, now that I went in, I talked to them about term, they have a young kid, right? If you guys remember that conversation. And then I went back, did a whole fact finder, figured out where they are. Now they're saving a lot more money than I thought. And so now I positioned, okay, some of this should be whole life, right? And so I don't know if you guys wanted me to show you like how I'm mentally going to prep and present that. So
yeah, let's do that one, Tyler.
I like
okay.
that.
All right, so let me pull up their term just to do a refresher here where we left off. Okay. Okay. So JM. Okay, so let me share this. I'm just going to pull it from the email since I'm on a different computer. Where? Okay, so I thought it'd be helpful to see, like, and I'm going to zoom in a second. Hold on, let me try to find. Why is this? Okay, right here. Okay, so here's basically what I went through with them as I did the fact finder. Remember, so this is about as quote as I can get when it comes to having this conversation, right? So this is my wife's, Kelly is my wife's very good friend from childhood, right? Her husband is Jeremy, who obviously I've become more friends with over the years, kind of like that forced, like, oh, okay, like if our wives are best friends, you know, we're going to become good friends. Luckily, we get along, and so we're good friends now. So they have their kid, and I will admit, guys, I am so bad at having this conversation, but it's so easy that you should never feel bad about having this conversation. So last time I found, because they don't live near us, so last time when we were in person, which was, 5-6 months ago, I said, hey, look, like, you guys know I'm in the insurance financial planning space. You guys know that I never like to meddle, like, and this is the exact language that I use. I never like to really meddle, like, personal friendships and financials. And you guys don't have to use me for anything, but you guys definitely, whether you use me or not, you guys definitely need to make sure you have term insurance in case something happens to either one of you, because it would change your life forever. Okay? They both said, yeah, we know, we definitely need to do that. And, obviously we're happy to use you. And I said, I'm not saying right now is the right time, but don't put it off much longer. Okay? So that was in August when we did, or no, that was in July when we did a trip together. So that conversation happened in July. September rolled around, and I saw them again, and I said, hey, look, I don't want you to be a pester, but I know you said you needed to look at it. Let's start it, right? The process is going to take a while. Let's start looking at it. And then I said, do you guys want me this is where the conversation differs, and you have to respect like your friends kind of like space, at least me. I know some guys that are like pound them away, which is fine, right? If that's your sales style, it works just as good. But if you're nervous about it, all I said is, look, let's walk through how much term insurance you should have, right? I'll educate you on the carriers, and you can either just do a transactional sale, kind of like I had that conversation, or I'm happy to look at your whole picture. Okay? So now I'm selecting, hey, do you guys just want me to like sell you the amount of insurance that you guys think you should need, or do you guys want me to look at your whole picture? Now they chose their whole picture. We started looking at their whole picture, their whole situation about a month ago. They're just like every other couple that you could imagine, where the husband is way more involved, but you want to drag the wife in, right? As much as you can. And I knew they were doing very well. I didn't know how well they were doing. So I thought they were both around 100,000 of income. Okay. And so I always told them, I said, hey, look, you should have somewhere between 10 and 20 times your income. And they said, okay, that sounds good. And so I said, and then that was kind of just a point, that was like in the foundation when I first met with them. So in this whole time, they know, okay, 10 to 20x, 10 to 20x. And then when I met with them, I said, hey, like, are you guys going to have another kid? Are you guys going to upsize your house? You're going to have 2 daycares. And I said, I like to lean more towards 20x. Okay. And so this is when I found out that they weren't making 100. They were each making 175. Okay. So they're making a lot of money. And so here you can see I ran 3 terms. I keep it super easy, guys. This is exactly what I send people, because if not, you make things so complicated. So obviously protective, right, is 2 million. It's very inexpensive. No great conversion options, no living benefits, no nothing. And then Corebridge has the living benefits, has okay coverage. And then obviously the Ameritas is convertible to whole life and has the living benefits. Okay. So you can see the price difference on a monthly basis for second best health ratings. Here it is for Kelly. I then explained to him what those were, right? And then I took a fact finder. Now, during this, like, I started the underwriting process as I started taking this fact finder. Okay, so they're in underwriting right now for 3 million. Okay, they landed on 3 million each. Now the question is okay, how much of that's going to be term and how much is going to be whole life? I told them we could figure that out at the end. We ended up applying for 2 million of 2 million of Corebridge and 2 million of Ameritas, and then we're going to scale it back. So that's what I applied for each carrier, and we're going to scale it down based on wherever we want to be. So you can see kind of what I wanted to show you is this email. So after I took the fact finder, before I go into how I'm gonna mentally break it down, I'm gonna go drive. They live in my wife's hometown, so when I say like why I'm not going to be on the 23rd, I'm going to drive up and see them. It's about an hour. They're in Sarasota. It's like a 3-hour drive, so it's just a commitment all day. That next to bringing the wife and a kid, I won't be around. So here is, how I structure my email. This was after an 1.5-hour meeting with them, where I was taking a fact finder, going through everything. I always say, no matter what, even if people are rough, I always congratulate them that they're taking action, right? So here's everything we covered, right? So the first thing, and so you guys are going to be able to tell by this is what we covered. So they always have a reference of oh, here's everything we spoke about, right? And so number 1 was the life insurance, right? This was complete to PDF. The underwriting process is going to take around 4 weeks. After we sit down for the approval, we're going to go through the different term lengths, pricing, and everything else. There's no commitment to get approved, so there's no cost if you change your mind. I brought up their disability coverage through work because what I found out was both of them are their base salaries are $60,000 each, and then everything else is quota and bonus based. So basically, they're at $100,000 of bonuses and stuff. So typically, employer DI will only cover base salaries. So that's good rule of thumb. So I was get me that DI info. That may be something that is worth getting a little additional coverage on your own, on an individual basis. So they haven't gotten this to me yet, which is fine, right? So I said get the details of their employer DI. They're busy at end of year, so again, I can always reference back, right? So then I talk about emergency reserves and opportunity funds, right? So right here, I'm already laying. They have a bunch of in savings, right? So we talked about, hey, you guys have almost too much in savings. It's time to start diversifying. And so level 1, right? 4-6 months in savings. I already talked to the wife. Kelly is very much, hey, what should I, what should I be she's very conservative, right? So she likes it makes her feel well that she has 12 months sitting in their savings. Jeremy is more like me, where he's hey, I'd be fine with 3 months and rely on our HELOC and everything else if shit got really bad, right? So right here you can see level 2. I'm already laying the foundation, even if it's not a whole life sale today. Whole life, we can talk more about this. I link a few videos below, which I attached just Chris's couple videos there. And then I talked about the HELOC as like a line of credit because he does want to get into properties and things like that. And so just more opportunity fund, right? Emergency reserves and opportunity fund. So we talked about their investments. They're going to send me all their statements and then boom, give me a risk tolerance on top of that, right? So that's just additional things. So that was kind of, you can see exactly the order of which we talked about everything. Okay. And then there's savings. So now let me break down where they are. Any questions so far? No, nothing so far. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the chat so you guys can like copy this and save it as a template if you want. Package it. Not a single question. All right. As long as there's not any questions, I'll keep going.
I just don't know what to ask. At least on my part.
I'm gonna have to do this in two things. I'll post this in Discord. That's what I'll do. So I'll post it in Discord at the end because it's too much to separate out into this chat. Okay, so again, we have this. Let me switch to this screen here. Stop sharing. Oh boy, why is my board not working? That's not good. Oh, it's because you got disconnected. All right, no moment, so guys.
It's bad vibe.
Now? HDMI. There it goes. Okay. So, all right. So, if you guys remember me, where did Chris Penn? Okay. So they're each making 170,000. Okay. So if we were to multiply this by 10, right, that would be 1.75 million. If we were to multiply this by 15, that's 2 point around 2. I'm going to do that estimate around 2.5 million, and then obviously we did 20. Or no, let's do it this way. 15 years is around 3 million. And then 20 is 4 million. Okay? Or give or take. Okay? So that's kind of like, I use big estimates, right? You can do hard numbers if your people are more hard number driven. The reason why I'm showing 4 million is technically she was making 200,000. So he's making 175, she's making 200. But hers is sales driven, so she has ups and downs. And his is a little more consistent. So he's in, just so you guys know, he's in like medical device sales and implants and stuff. So he's in the surgeries with the doctors, like doing knees, and she's in IT sales. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Speak up because I'm not looking at the chat.
You broke it up between two term companies, Products USA. But when it comes to underwriting, we have to take two underwriting exams because of
No, so if you know you're going to apply to two carriers, this is why I always like to order my own this is why I like to order my own exams. So you can tell the medical exam company, hey, I'm doing X with carrier 1, and then I'm doing Y with carrier 2, and they will take both exams simultaneously. So it's not double the amount of labs, it's not double that amount or anything like that. It's just the forms that they have the client sign, they'll have them sign 2 forms, right? They'll have them sign the HIPAA or whatever for company X, right, which in this case is Corbridge, and then they'll have them sign company Y stuff, which is Emeritus. Okay, so they'll have them do everything all in one medical exam, which is, if I have the choice of scheduling my own medical, I always do it. Okay, so one medical exam for both companies. So we ended up at this 3 million mark. Okay, that's where we ended up for both of them. And so the question then became, okay, well, how do we split it? Okay, so I left it with, let's apply for 2 million with each carrier, a 20-year term. Okay. And then at the end, most likely, right, and keep in mind that I opened with this during the call, right? So this is kind of before I really got into, if you remember looking at that agenda, that was before I got into everything else, right? Before I got into their picture, because I wanted to make sure, like, they're friends, right? God forbid he's driving to the hospital and freaking gets in a car accident and I don't have $3 million. Not only is Kelly going to be pissed at me, but, like, my wife's going to be pissed at me, you know? Like, it's going to be, it would change their life without having any insurance, okay? You know, and they have a 1-year-old. So I said, look, we're going to apply for this. Most likely we're going to take a total of $3 million based on where they wanted to be budget-wise, based on all those other things. They felt like they would be okay because they basically felt that they could take, 150-ish thousand a year. They're saving a lot of money, and I'm going to get into that in a second. So they just felt like 100,000 for 10 years or 150,000 for 15 years would be plenty, because she's making good money too. Okay, so now out of this 3 million, before we got into like the whole life conversation, I said, look, let's do, because of price, I said, let's do 2 million of Corbridge and 1 million of Emeritus. That's kind of like where I said, that's why I was like, okay, this gives me $1 million that I can convert, and then 2 million that will last, 20 or 30 year, because I was going to do potentially 30 year for them, for just inexpensive with living benefits. Yeah, and keep in mind this was on both of them, so that was really 2 million of convertible term that I'd have for whole life. Okay, so now everybody with me so far? So we kind of got that in the thing. We started this application process and then said, all right, let's continue on with looking at the whole picture. So then number 2 is the DI, right? And then we got into like how much they're saving. Okay, so this is like their picture. So they are saving around, they're basically living off one income. Okay, so they're saving one entire salary. Okay, so they have, they're saving around $9,000 per month. Right now, with no guidance, no target, I'll go through with what they were saving that in. Jeremy was saving around 10% into his 401k with no match, right? So that's around $1,500 a month there. And then Kelly saving 10% into her 401k, and she gets a 5% match. Okay, so there's another $1,500 a month there. Okay, so I did the whole conversation of, why are you doing this? Do you think taxes are going to go up? Yes. Do you want to is there things that you think you might want to use this money for before 59 and a half, like real estate opportunities? Yes. So why are you doing the 401k? They basically said, I don't know, it's just what we thought we were supposed to be doing. So I basically freed up this $1,500 a month, right? I was like, all right, that makes no sense without the match, right? So I added, and then basically hers is, so then I said, look, I'm always a believer. I'm not the kind of guy that will say, like, always at least do to your match, because it's 100% on your money. So you should at least do up to that. It's not a terrible idea for them. You know, they're at basically at a $400,000 income tax bracket. So a couple extra bucks for some deductions can't be the end of the world for them. So there's no Roth component in this, unfortunately. So she's relatively high up, so she's going to talk to them about like adding a Roth component into their 401k, but right now there is none. So basically I have another plus $750 from her, because we're going to reduce her 401k as well to only go to the match. Any questions so far?
How are you getting to 1,500?
Basically, I mean, I'm kind of rounding, but 10% of 175k is 17,500. So 1,500 a month is 18,000. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So this plus that, right? Basically 11,000 a month. Okay. Now here's what I almost always do. This is what they told me. I didn't do a budget worksheet. I didn't do anything like that. This is just, you know, based on what they had in their savings and what they have in their taxable account and what they said they're saving. They're pretty accurate, right? So here's basically what I am going to lean into from a sales standpoint, right? That I know is conservative, okay? And this is just, as you build the relationship, I find this easier, okay? So, just grab my calculator here. So, from a standpoint, right? I'm going to say, first I'm going to do is I'm going to round down to 10,000. Okay? And I'm going to say, hey, that first 1,000, let's just keep putting it into a cash sweep savings. Because I know as soon as they have another kid, right, that 1,000 is going to be going to daycare or more. Okay? So they're going to lose that. Okay? So out of this 10,000, just to keep math simple, I'm going to say add an additional 25%, which would be 2,500, as true flexibility. Okay? So maybe this is like a velocity banking side. Okay? As in, hey, let's use this to pay down car, student loan. They have a couple other family things where they might be on the hook for her grandmother's care. So, you know, I'm leaving a little flexibility there to like savings kind of adjustments over the next 12 months, right? So keep in mind, I can always go back to this in a year. Okay? So that leaves me with $7,500. I find this is two ways. Number one, it's like I'm not going after all of this, right? And then number two, you know, I'm still working on they've never been educated on whole life before. You know, they are obviously the 1% of their friends. Like besides us, all of their other friends do not do as well as they do. You know, so you're battling a lot of different mindsets that they get accustomed to. So out of this 7,500, what am I going to do? So right now, everything that they were saving, they just did their pool, they just did their roof, and they got their savings account, right, in their bank account to 120,000, which is basically 12 times 12. Their monthly expenses are around 10,000 a month, so it's basically 12 months of saving. Okay. So out of this 7,500, okay, I'm going to be looking at 2,000 to 3,000 into whole life, right, with a base premium of around 500. So base 500, right, with kind of this 70-30, right, or 66, whatever. So 1,500 into each of them, right? So now they basically have anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000. I may front load them with I may look at showing them a front load of 10K into each of them. She's very conservative, so this is like a slow building process for her. Okay, so right there, that opens up one sale. Okay, they're still a firm believer in kind of like the market, and they really want to get into real estate, like really bad. Okay, so basically that brings us to 3,000 minus 7,500 is 4,500 left. Okay, so then we're going to take another 3,000 and keep telling him to do his taxable account, so that way I don't piss off the investment advisor, which I'm trying to. You don't want to sometimes it's not worth combating and waiting for the investment advisor to make a mistake or show that, hey, this doesn't really align with what you're believing, but all they've ever known is upside in the market. They're super young, so I'm not gonna fight it right now. It's not worth the fight. I'd rather make sure they're protected, rather make sure they have the DI, and set up this as that level 2 kind of safe money, right? Because they already have this, which is like level 1 safe money, and they already have a HELOC, which I found out. So they already have kind of those 3 things, and so now, and then this last kind of 1,500 a month to plus, this 2,500 eventually, right? We are going to be positioning soon for real estate, right? And so whether we need to use some of this for the down payment plus this, plus some of, that 1,000 plus this 1,000, right? It just keeps me to have hey, I know I'm not committing them to something that they can't continually afford, because I have a lot of wiggle room over here on this side for deploy. And so basically, if we do this math, right, let's just say those expenses don't come through. We have 3,500. We basically have 5,000 a month, 3, 4, 5, right? So at the end of the next year, at the end of 25, they should have 60,000. They'll be earning 4% on this money in a money market, give or take. And right here, down payment for something. Okay? And then now we're starting to implement Velocity Banking plus the whole life over here. Okay? So again, I have to potentially factor in a little bit of DI, some care for their grandmother, which is an ugly story that I don't want to get into, but some of this may be needed. So now as time goes on, right, I'm still going to have at least some, right, because I already have the approvals. I'm going to leave some of this emeritus as term so I can convert it in the future. right? And so this is basically what I'll draw out for them on a sheet of paper. I'll walk them through it. I'm not making them have any drastic changes to this because that's what she's really nervous about. We're going to do it slowly over time. And by showing this extra 10K, I'm going to give more room, I'm going to show them like, hey, this is what you're going to do, but I'm going to like lean it in to where, hey, you can put up to, $2,000 a month into each of yours. So that's that's $48,000 a year combined. Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking, right? That's what I'm splitting it up as, right? And then I got to tackle the DI, and then I sent their investment stuff with their investment person to my investment person to have that battle. But I'm not trying to lose this sale by fighting this amount, right? That's not worth it to me. I'd rather make sure I get this, because I promise you when the market corrects over the next couple of years that I'm going to be like, hey, look, remember all this safe money that I set up for you, that financial, I use that financial foundation triangle, right? And I say, look, everything you guys are doing, right? You have your income, you have that, cash, right? Then you have, your whole life up here. And then you have your taxable accounts or whatever, right? That's not bad triangle, but taxable. So they skipped basically I'm just going to tell them, hey, you guys have skipped this section, right? And you guys have gone up to here. We already are eliminating that, which is going to spring load you into where they want to be. This is, again, aligning where their monies and values are. This is where they want to be, right? If that's not where they want to be, you have to adjust and say, hey, we're going to do this, right, as your safe money, but it's going to be more for volatility buffer or emergency reserves, right? I'm positioning this to get to them to here, as well as a little bit of that account. Okay? So it's all about making sure hey, you want to get to here? I'm showing you how to get to here. Okay? The right way. And so I'm basically going to draw that out. I'm going to be like, hey, out of the $10,000 a month, right? Here's what I'm going to say, $3K. I'll put it into a nice little one-pager presentation, $3K, 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 right? So investments, savings, whole life, right? And then I'll list the pros. And then they're going to say yes, no, maybe they say, hey, let's not do 3, let's do 1, right? I don't know. I haven't had that talk with them yet. It's next week. So any questions on how I came up with those numbers, why I separated them that way based on everything else that I told you?
Tyler, so with the whole life, position as another savings, because you already got the term insurance, so how would you bring the whole life to it?
Well, that's a great question. So, the first thing is the term insurance is the term insurance conversation was my in to this whole thing, right? I said, hey, so that was a totally separate conversation, right? And if you remember in the beginning, I said, hey, I'm happy just to do this. I just want to make sure you guys have, I walk through my little box worksheet, which I'll share with you guys. I'm getting it done for Life 180 branding and stuff. I walk them through that little term worksheet, and I say, this is how much you guys should have, right? And I'll say, is this right? If they're friends, sometimes they're a little iffy at first to say how much they're making, right? And I say, look, I tell them, and this is important, especially if you have a close group knit of friends, right? Where you have a circle of 10, 6, 7 friends, and you guys all kind of know each other. I tell them, hey, look, guys, just so you know, whatever you say to me is in confidence, right? I'm not going to share it with anybody. I come across with a lot of different people. Like, don't feel embarrassed. Like, nothing you say is ever going to leave. Like, and you can even say, like, if you don't want me to tell Lindsay, my wife, like, I won't, right? Like, we're pretty, and sometimes, we don't care if you tell your wife, but, like, don't tell everybody else, obviously. But in the very beginning, I said, do you guys want me to look at your whole picture, or do you guys just want me to look at the term, right? Like, are you guys covered? They said, please look at our whole picture. That opens the door right there, right? That's giving me permission to ask all of the questions, right? And then come up with some solutions, or not even come up with solutions. I'm not even giving them solutions. Well, on the first call that I had with them, right, when I took the fact finder, I did it with them live, which is why it took a very long time, because they wanted to see everything. They wanted to be educated, and they're close friends, right? But when they first said, hey, we want you to look at our whole picture, I showed them where they are and what they're doing and where that's going to go, right? That's the first thing that I did, right? And then I already know enough about them, right? But I asked them anyways, where do you want to go, right? And so they said, we want to own rental properties. We want this. We want guarantees. We want, we want to be in real estate, like yada, yada, yada. I want to start my own business rather than work for somebody else. And so everything that he was saying, right, I'm like, boom, why are you doing your 401k, right? There's a clear disconnect that you can have with that person talking about the negatives of the 401k, right? And what they're doing right now. Or where
Tyler,
they want to
quick
be.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so when they said we want to go through the whole picture, what did you use to go through that with them? You certainly do have something, right?
Yeah, the X-ray.
Okay.
Which is in Absorb, or I can.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
You can post it. So I go through the X-ray, I ask him everything, and then I kind of go through that money, values, and beliefs worksheet. I'm not as like formal with it. Once you guys get 10, 15 times of using it, like, you're going to discover your own process, and you're not going to need it anymore. You're just going to go through the questions and ask, but it takes repetition and it takes practice. So I use the X-ray, but I don't use the X-ray. Like, I ask every question that's on there, but I'm not sitting there filling out the X-ray. But for the first 3 years of my career, I filled out an X-ray with people. So then, right, so that was the permission that I had, Julius, right? And so once I saw, okay, everything you guys told me means you guys want to go this non-traditional route. You guys want to get into real estate. You guys are already saving, right? And then I say, what are you earning on your savings account? And they say, I don't know, it's sitting in our savings account in Bank of America. So I pull up savings account, Bank of America, APR, which I already know, 0.015% a year. And then I say, look, there's some things that you guys could be doing, right? This is all I said. There's some things that you guys could be doing that would make your money more efficient for you. Would you like me to show you some samples and examples of what that looks like? That's it. That's all I said. Yes, we would love that. Thank you. Boom. I took all the facts. I can come back. And if you don't know to the solutions, you guys got to bring in me, bring in Matt, bring in a mentor, bring somebody you're comfortable with. I'm happy to go through an X-ray, put a plan together, and then you present the plan. And then you say, hey, look, this is everything you're doing, which is great. The fact that they're saving as much as they are, I could not compliment them enough. I was like, I'm so proud of you guys. Most of our peers at my age are, they're maybe saving 10, 20, 30% of their income, and, they're spending the rest on stupid shit, right? You guys are living off one income, saving the rest. You guys are well ahead of the curve, right? And I showed them, I said, look, traditionally, you guys are going to be okay, but they want to, I can show you how to get there faster, right? You can use all these different lines. Would you like me to show you some ways that you can get to your goal faster? Which their goal was, as soon as we can have $15,000 a month in passive income, we're going to retire. That's their goal. What's the fastest way to get there, right? And so they also believe in real estate being the fastest way to get there. If they said, I believe the stock market's the fastest way to get there, I have a heck of a mountain to climb, right? But you have to at least see with what you're working with, okay? So then, now that I have permission to come back with the solutions, and I know what they're saving, now just figuring out, could I go all 7,000 into whole life and pitch it? And sure, I could. But to me, it's a entry level. Let me start with a good, solid foundation. It's an excellent premium, right? I'm not gonna go for the home run. I'm gonna go for the double or the triple. If we're talking baseball analogy, a double or a triple. That's excellent premium to write to start. Everyone should be happy to write something like that. And you have a ease because they're saying, oh, we're saving 10 grand. Oh, this is only 3,000. Okay, done. Right? It's like only 30% of what we're saving. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm telling them to keep doing everything else they're doing, and I'm setting myself for future sales next year because odds are their income's going to go up, and their expenses probably aren't going to increase that much. Especially if I can get them into that velocity banking, and I know Kelly has some student loans, which I didn't mention, and car payments, which are out of that 10,000 a month that they're spending, right? So I know there's going to be future sales. So I'm just positioning where they see and use the whole life for their real estate. My goal is to get them in a real estate property in the next 2 years. By 2026, end of 2026, I got to help them find something. Any other questions? I see one. How did you layer the DI policy? So I just went through, when I go through that that foundational triangle that I go through quite a bit. I just said, look, your income's here, right? Next is protection, right? So I went through auto, home, DI, and term, right? Obviously, they had auto, they had term. I always tell people, even though you're not PNC licensed, guys, you can get a copy of the PNC of their auto statement, and anybody that's making good money that does not have at least 100, 300 in coverage, they got to get more coverage, right? There's a much greater chance to get into an auto accident than dying, right? There's a much greater chance you get into an auto accident than getting disabled, right? There's a much greater chance of something happening to your house than getting disabled or needing term insurance, right? And those are the two that people buy every year. Every year they're shopping, right? So you can start building relationships and seeing, especially if you're talking to people locally, this person used Jeff as his auto guy, right? This person used Matt for their homeowners. Oh, that's weird. Maybe if you see it's a local PNC company, you should look them up to see if they do term insurance, right? That's how you start expanding your local market, right? Saying hey, I was meeting with a client, Matt, Jeff, and I saw he had his auto policy with you. I didn't see on your website that you do life and health. I do life and health. Is it okay if I send you my auto and home policy that you can audit? I would love to send you some more clients, right? And you're going to test that guy 3 or 4 times. You're going to see how your clients react. And then you're either going to say, oh, he's giving me some things back as well, or, oh, I got to find somebody else, right? And it takes a long time. It's not going to happen right away. Then I talk about their DI, right? And I say, oh, you guys both have DI through work, right? They work for big companies, Arthrex, which is a huge medical device company, and I forget her company now, but it's some big tech company. And they say, oh, yeah, we do. And I said, okay, well, is it based on your total gross income or is it based on your base salary? And they're like, what do you mean? Right? So right there, I know they're not educated. So you go in, you educate them. You'd say, I flat out say it, hey, you have a greater chance of needing DI than you do of term. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, we have Aflac or we have Allstate too or whatever. And then I say, okay, well, that's short term. And I was like, no offense, you guys don't need that. You guys have 100 grand sitting in your savings. I think you'll survive for 3 months of no short term. So that's when I say, hey, you need to find out if your DI only covers your base salary, which for them is each like 60 and 75K, or if it covers all of it. And they say, oh, we have no idea, we didn't even know. And so that's their homework. So I can't help them until they check that. And then once they check that, I'll say, hey, like, this is how much you can have, right? This is how much you do have. This is the price difference. And then I have a little DI walkthrough that I go through. So that's how I layer that in. But meanwhile, I already have all their info. So if it's like they decide to go forward with that, it's like, hey, I'll take care of the app and I'll send it to you to sign. Like once you kind of get that info the first go around, everything else is easy. So that's how I did that. Any other questions? Any other comments? When you say balance all that out, you mean all the insurances or the balance out between their savings stuff?
Yeah, so especially the DI, how to incorporate the DI, because I'm not that familiar with DI and how to the short term and all that stuff. How do you approach that?
Well, I mean that's a good question. I mean there's no true science, right? But you can always get up to 60% of your income tax-free, which is equivalent of 80% not tax-free, right? You're never going to get 100% of somebody's income because there would then be no incentive for that person to go back to work, right? So the insurance companies always want there to be an incentive for that person to go back to work to make 100% of what they're making, not 80, okay? So from a DI standpoint, it's always around between 60 and 66% tax-free of their gross salary, right? Now, if you go to somebody and you say, hey, I do the simple, and I'm not saying this I do the simple this, right? If you had two companies, I'm going to go through this really fast, and we can cover this, in the future too. I can certainly go into more depth, but so if you had company A, right, and company B, okay, company A gives you $100,000 a year, right, and company B gives you $95,000 a year, okay. But if company B, if you get hurt and can't work, right? They're going to pay you $60,000 tax-free, which is like the equivalent of, in this case, $75,000, right? As long as you're hurt all the way to 65. Which company are you going to take? Which company are you going to go work for?
B.
And almost everybody says, I have very few people that say company A, but most people say company B, right? And you say, oh, why is that? Like, oh, well, that sounds like a no-brainer of a benefit, like for only $5,000, right? The reason why you use $5,000, right, is that that's 5% of their income. Okay? And so you can say, well, what if I could give you that same benefit for between 1 and 3% of your income? So instead of costing it $5,000 for you, it costs you somewhere between 1 and 3%. It's all based on occupation, right? So some occupations are 5%. So if you're dealing with like an electrician, right? Like clearly they have a little bit more risk than the guy that's going into the office every day, right? And just sitting at a computer. So definitely more like white collars, like the lower end, right? Doctors, so there's a factoring of like how much benefit and things like that, but ultimately everybody's choosing option B, right? And so in their case, right, if their company's only giving them 60% of their $60,000 salary, right, that's, so 60% of, let's do 75K. and I don't know that this is the case. I'm just saying I see this a lot. I see this a lot in like doctors. They get a base salary, then they get like a bonus based on their patients that they see and all that stuff. So times 0.6. So their DI is only going to cover them for 45,000, and so let's round and let's say 4,000 a month. Okay. Well, if they're making 175,000, well, there's another 5,000 a month, right? There's 100,000 of coverage, eligible income that they're not being covered for. Okay. And so basically you could say, oh, well, we can get you another 5K a month, right? 60% of that is 60K, which would be 5,000, right? Bringing their total to 9,000 a month. Tax-free. So it's just a matter of like, and I'm not saying they need all 5 of it, right? Or all, they would take all the shortfall, they would take all 5, but 4,000 a month doesn't cover their fixed expenses. Their mortgage is 4,000, right? So I always say like, hey, let's make sure your mortgage is covered, daycare is covered, some care if needed is covered. So DI is that's a good question. So DI is more based on occupation and salary than like health. There's not a medical exam that takes place, right? So the things that are like DI red flags are more like back pain and like arthritis and things that are going to make you disabled, right? Like blood pressure and things like that are not going to knock you out of work, so to speak, right? So obviously a stroke might, and so like those things are going to play a factor, but they're not drawing blood for DI. It's all based on occupation, age, income amount, right? So it's heavy on occupation, but it's all like, oh, this person had a back surgery, right? But what they can do is they can exclude back. So they'll like if somebody has a back problem, they will exclude. Hey, we'll cover you for everything but back, right? But a back problem. And so like you'll see that more often where they'll say, oh, we're not going to cover arthritis of the hands because like they already have something like that, right? So there's a lot of ways that DI, but typically if it's an average person, it's somewhere between 1% and 3% of their income. White collar industry. Blue collar, probably closer to 5.
You have no license for that, right? Yeah.
Life and health, yeah, 215 license, right there, yeah, health. But it's all done by like the insurance providers that we use. So like all the big whole life companies usually have a DI product. So Meritus has a good DI. Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 good companies. So, but anyways, guys, I hope that was helpful today. We'll go through some more stuff. Again, I'll put an announcement next week before, just to remind you guys that I won't be here, but we'll pick up the weekend after. And I'll plan to have some of those. I saw that poll being taken, and I'll start making sure I get you guys these like little worksheets that I use. So, all right. Have a good week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions.
Thanks a lot. Bye.